Resident Evil has a lot of characters, I mean a lot, and there are a lot of important characters who either never appeared in a game or just simply aren't really talked about. Welcome to Bird's Tales, the show where we take any character from any media, break down their lives, and analyze their character. Today we're doing something just a bit different. We're taking lesser known characters from Resident Evil who are still important to the story, but there isn't enough information about them for a full-length video. The first character we're looking at for today is George Trevor. So who is George Trevor and what is his importance to Resident Evil as a series? George Trevor was the father of Lisa Trevor. He was also an architect from New York, famous for his creative designs. Most of Trevor's designs included traps and puzzles. So yeah, he's that asshole. In 1962, George Trevor was contracted by a very rich English nobleman. He was to build that nobleman a mansion in the Arklay Mountains. Who was that nobleman? Oswald Lee Spencer. The mansion would contain some of Trevor's signature traps and puzzles, while being modeled after the Spencer estate in Europe. In 1967, the mansion was completed, and Trevor and his family will be invited to stay at the manor for some time. Trevor, still being busy with work, will send his wife and daughter to Spencer Mansion first, and he will meet them there after he's done with work. I'm not going to go into detail what happened to Lisa Trevor and her mother, Jessica Trevor, after arriving to the manor. I'm gonna save that for a possible Lisa Trevor video. But after arriving to the manor, both will become test subjects, and they both will be infected with the progenitor virus. Jessica Trevor will be killed after the virus failed to establish itself in her body, and Lisa Trevor will become an Umbrella test subject for many years up until her death in 1998. George Trevor would arrive to the mansion on the 13th of November after his wife was killed. Once Trevor arrived, he asked where his wife and daughter was, and Spencer responded by saying they left to visit their Aunt Emma, who was ill. This would have been a great time for George to say, "Wait a minute, I have no Aunt Emma," and realize that everything Spencer was saying was bullshit. But apparently he does have an Aunt Emma, and I'm guessing Lisa Trevor and her mother were actually going to leave before they were kidnapped. That night, Spencer and Trevor had dinner together. Even though Spencer was there, Trevor still felt a little lonely without his wife and daughter. The next day, Spencer gave him a tour of the manor. George was amazed by Spencer's art collection, stuffed collection, and his collection of knight armors. Then Spencer would tell Trevor his plans for the manor. He said he wanted it to be a vacation home for the employees of his new pharmaceutical company. But he didn't want it to be just for employees. He also wanted to let test subjects, outsiders, stay as well. Trevor was a little confused since he believed that this mansion would be a private vacation home for the rich nobleman. On the 18th of November, Trevor couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, and when he went to the courtyard, he noticed a hole behind the artificial waterfall that wasn't a part of his design. But as we know, that hole would lead you to the Arklay laboratory, the real reason for why this mansion was built. He would then be escorted by men in white robes away from the courtyard. If I was Trevor at this time, I most likely would say it's time to go. I'm leaving today, not tomorrow, today. But no, Trevor decides to stay for 2 more days before deciding to leave. On the 20th of November, Trevor lost his lighter. He believed it was in the Jew sandwich room, but when he checked it, it wasn't there. This is also the day that the boredom and the mysterious things that were happening around Trevor were finally getting to him, so he told Spencer that he would be leaving the following day. That night, Trevor packed his bags, and in the morning, Spencer escorted him down to the first floor. Trevor would then look into one of the rooms, and he noticed one of the men in white robes staring at a painting. That man then said, "Right now, your family is," and Trevor felt something very hot hitting his head, and he would lose consciousness. Trevor was most likely out for a few hours. He would wake back up, locked inside of a room. On the 24th of November, Trevor had been locked in that room for 3 days. That day, a man in a white robe would bring him food and say, "Sorry to put you through all of this, but it's for security reasons." And now it all made sense. He and Spencer were the only two who knew the secrets of the mansion, and with him gone, the only one who would know is Spencer. Trevor then began to hope that his family were safe and weren't going through what he was. That day, Trevor made the decision to escape. Skipping to the 27th of November, Trevor managed to escape the room, but he knew because of the traps that he built, it wouldn't be easy to escape the mansion. On the 29th of November, Trevor found a high heel. It seemed very familiar. The only person who came to mind was Jessica Trevor, but he didn't want to believe that his family shared the same fate as him. Trevor was also slowly losing hope that he could ever escape this mansion. On the 31st of November, Trevor had gone a few days without food pool of water. He was extremely weak when he came across a tombstone with his name. Trevor didn't realize that the moment he stepped into the mansion, his fate was sealed. George Trevor would ask for his family to forgive him for getting him involved in all of this, and as he died, he wished that God would justify his death for his family's safety. There isn't much to go off of when reading the notes that we have on George Trevor, but we can see that George Trevor really cared a lot about his family, and he was most likely your average family man during the 60s. George Trevor was also extremely passionate about his work, building all of his designs with his heart. And Trevor would also regret ever building the Spencer Mansion. Look, I feel extremely bad for George Trevor, but I just have one question. How the hell was he a famous architect in Resident Evil world? Like, the man built traps in like everything he made. And it's not like the traps were goofy or even fun traps. They were like, make the wrong mistakes and bam, you're a sandwich. And even if the Spencer Mansion was the first mansion he's ever built a trap where the ceiling crush you, he has to have other things where there are traps like that because he was so comfortable with building it. And with the puzzles, if you aren't Spencer, what are you trying to hide that you need such a complicated puzzle like the shadow painting puzzle in Resident Evil 7? I know it wasn't technically him, but if Trevor and Chamberlain is not his company, that's very stupid. Anyway, Trevor and Chamberlain, the company George Trevor was likely co-founder of, would help Jack install those shadow painting puzzles. And not only that, George Trevor's blueprints will be used to create the Queen Zenobia in Resident Evil Revelations, which is the first Resident Evil game I've ever played. And also the Arctic base will have a room that's modeled off of the main hall in Spencer Mansion. The next character we're looking at is Michael Warren. Who is Michael Warren? Michael Warren was the last mayor of Raccoon, as well as the man who brought electricity and power to the once small town in the Arklay Mountains. There's even less written about Michael Warren than George Trevor, and honestly this section is going to be extremely small because of that. But Michael Warren's importance to the first 3 Resident Evil games are undeniable. He is the reason Umbrella was able to get away with so many of their crimes in Raccoon. It's unknown when Michael Warren was born. Michael Warren was an electrician, and he succeeded in bringing electricity to a small town in Arklay that would later grow to be Raccoon City. He was also responsible for pioneering the cable car system. In 1987, Warren ran for mayor, and because of his contributions to the town, he succeeded in becoming the next mayor. During this time, Umbrella would pour a lot of money into Raccoon, and the city would begin to rapidly grow. A statue of Mayor Warren would be built in City Hall. The people absolutely loved him. It's because of him and Umbrella that the city was able to grow as massively as it did. But Mayor Warren heard the truth from the people of Raccoon. The reason why Umbrella was giving Raccoon so much money was to keep Mayor Warren on their side. Mayor Warren would turn a blind eye to many of Umbrella's crimes, but Mayor Warren had to find a way to clean that money. So he was using his modernization campaign to clean the money he was receiving from Umbrella. And if you ask me, this is just even more proof that Raccoon was doomed from the beginning. In 1998, the Stars would investigate a series of cannibalistic murders in the Arklay Mountains. There, they will uncover many of Umbrella's crimes. After returning to Raccoon City, they attempted to launch an investigation into Umbrella. But Mayor Warren wasn't the only government official in Umbrella's wallet. The Raccoon's police chief, Brian Irons, would dissolve the group to stop this investigation. With the police chief and the mayor on Umbrella's side, Stars never really stood a chance. In September 1998, as the T-virus began to spread throughout Raccoon, Mayor Warren showed little concern about Raccoon citizens. He was only worried about his own safety. He fled Raccoon, leaving his daughter at the police station under Chief Irons' watch. But as we all know, Chief Irons is a madman. And on the 29th of September, Chief Irons would kill Mayor Warren's daughter. In the original game, her body would be discovered in his office, and in the remake, her body is discovered in Raccoon's orphanage. After fleeing Raccoon, Mayor Warren placed himself in the custody of the US Army. It's unknown what happened to him after 1998. Unlike most people who were involved in the destruction of Raccoon, Mayor Warren never paid for his crimes, even putting himself in the protection of the US government. I don't know why I keep adding this section in for these characters, but I'm gonna do it because it's a bird's tales. Just like everyone else in this video, there is not much to go off of. But we can tell that Mayor Warren was a very self-centered man, and his selfishness was one of the causes for the destruction of Raccoon and the death of his daughter. Mayor Warren lied to the people, pretending as if he cared about them, but the only thing he cared about was fattening his own wallet. Wow, he's the perfect politician. I bet you thought I wasn't gonna talk about John Clemens in this one. Of course I was gonna talk about him. I brought him up in my Birkin video. Why wouldn't I talk about him in this one? As I mentioned, John Clemens was an Umbrella researcher from Chicago. He was moved to the Arclay lab after William Birkin's transfer to the Umbrella nest. And if you watched my Birkin video and remembered, I said John Clemens was somewhat of a goody two-shoes. He disagreed with Umbrella actions, and his morality was looked at as a negative trait from an otherwise great researcher. Umbrella Intelligence also believed that if there were some kind of leak, he would be the prime suspect. In early 1998, Ada Wong was sent by Umbrella's rival company to infiltrate the Arclay laboratory. She would disguise herself as a researcher, and soon after arriving, she and Clemens would begin dating. And everyone knew about it, even those who weren't even working at the Arclay lab, like Annette Birkin. Clemens loved Ada, and he would use her name as the password for his personal computer. And again, everyone at Umbrella knew about it, even those who weren't working at the Arclay lab, like Annette Birkin. Jesus, this man can't keep nothing a secret. Everyone know everything about his life. From his beliefs to his passwords, nothing is a secret with this man. On May 13th, 1998, an accident would occur. This would cause the Epsilon strain to spread throughout the Arclay lab. John Clemens would get infected with the T-virus, and in his last moments, he wrote a letter addressed to Ada Wong. In the letter, he tells Ada that he's infected with the T-virus, and he knows that she isn't infected yet. He requests that if she's the last one at the Arclay lab who wasn't infected with the T-virus, that she destroy the facility, and she make everything that happened there public. He directs her to the self-destruct button, and he tells her where she can find the information he gathered on Umbrella. He then makes one final request. If Ada were to find him, he requests that she put him out of his misery. Ada wouldn't receive this letter. Instead, she would learn of John Clemens' fate from Annette Birkin. John Clemens' letter will either be found by Jill or the Second Coming of the Frost. If you don't know who the Second Coming of the Frost is, it's Chris. Based off his letter and what Annette Birkin said about him, we can see that John Clemens really did love Ada Wong. We all know Ada Wong didn't feel the same for him. She was just using him. We can also see that John Clemens was one of the only people working at Umbrella with morals. And if you're asking yourself, why didn't he expose Umbrella? Based off the information he gathered on Umbrella, you can see that he was planning to expose them. Also, John Clemens was a brilliant researcher, and it's easy to notice because he was brought from Umbrella Chicago to take William Birkin's place. And if they believed that he could take William's place, then he definitely was a great researcher. The last character for today is Edward Ashford, co-founder of Umbrella. Edward Ashford was born in the early 20th century. Like Spencer, he was a British nobleman. Born to Arthur Ashford, 4th Earl Ashford. Edward Ashford would be the heir to the Ashford legacy. Sometime in the 1930s, the Ashford will receive a gift from Hermann Goering. Yes, that Hermann Goering. He sent the family 2 pairs of golden Lugers. Around this time, Edward Ashford would develop an interest in the eugenics movement. He hung out with other influential biologists, such as Dr. Beardsley, 16th Earl Beardsley, Dr. Henry, just Henry, Dr. James Marcus, and of course, Dr. Oswald E. Spencer. He, Dr. James Marcus, and Oswald E. Spencer grew an interest in the flower Stairway of the Sun. In Henry Travis' work Natural History Conspectus, it was written that the flower Stairway of the Sun would kill or grant strength to those who consumed it. Marcus and Spencer believed that the flower contained a virus, and it was the virus that would either grant strength or kill those who were infected by it. They also believed that that virus could probably be used to create the Ubermensch. So, James Marcus, Dr. Spencer, and Brandon Bailey, James Marcus's apprentice, went on an expedition to West Africa to retrieve the flower Stairway of the Sun. They were successful, and after examining the flower, they discovered the virus. They didn't name the virus the progenitor virus. However, in its current state, the progenitor virus was basically useless, killing pretty much everyone who was infected by it. They returned to Europe, and Dr. Ashford, Dr. Spencer, and Dr. Marcus began to try and modify the virus so it could be used for their eugenics movement. However, there was another problem. The rich noblemen weren't that rich. So Dr. Spencer came up with the idea of creating a pharmaceutical company, and Dr. Ashford agreed to the plans. But Dr. James Marcus wasn't interested in business, and it would take some convincing. Ultimately, he would agree. Before I go any further, I probably should mention something that I should have mentioned earlier, but in Alexander's memos, the son of Edward Ashford, it said that Spencer and his father discovered the progenitor virus, or as he said, the mother virus. However, in Resident Evil 5, Edward Ashford isn't mentioned when a progenitor virus is discovered.
But wait!
And in Wesker's report, Wesker says that Edward Ashford was one of the people who discovered the progenitor virus, or as he said, the starter virus. And not only that, Wesker adds that he planned on creating the T-virus. So I thought two things after this. One, Resident Evil writers just can't stay consistent no matter how much you pay them. And two, maybe I can make sense of this. So this is what I came up with. Maybe Alexander and Wesker were wrong. I don't think Ashford was there when the progenitor virus was discovered, but I do believe that he planned on creating the T-virus. And I think this happened right before the founders of Umbrella split up. And I think that every T-virus project is based off of his and Marcus's research during that time. Because why else would Wesker, someone who's working at the Arclay laboratory, mention that Ashford planned on creating the T-virus if it's not somewhat important there? In 1968, the three founded Umbrella. Sometime after Umbrella was founded, the three founders of Umbrella relationship began to crumble. The three founders competed on who can get results faster. Edward Ashford most likely stayed in Europe and worked on the progenitor virus there with his son. However, his son wasn't really interested in biology. He was more interested in human cloning and creating little shits that are kinda cute but also really horrifying. And every time you see them as kids in Code Veronica, you're just like, why wasn't no one freaked out about these kids just existing? While Ashford was working on the progenitor virus, an accident occurred, and it was orchestrated by Oswald E. Spencer. I'm guessing that Edward Ashford was getting more results than the other two, so Spencer was extremely jealous. Ashford was infected with his modified version of the progenitor virus and died soon after. After his death, his son would complete the Arctic base, and he was successful in creating two clones. Their names were Alfred and Alexia Ashford. Alexia Ashford would use Edward Ashford's research to complete the T. Veronica virus, and Dr. James Marcus made Edward Ashford's plans a reality by creating the prototype T-virus. Unlike almost everyone on this video, I can't even go based off things that he has written. I mean, Mira Warren is like that too, but some of Mira Warren's actions, you can tell what kind of person he is. Edward Ashford don't really have those kind of actions. So I am really guessing. On Albert Sexy Wesker's report, somebody commented Albert Sexy Wesker on my Wesker video, and I hope they're watching this video and made it this far. Wesker mentioned that whenever they ran into a problem, the older researchers would say if only Professor Ashford was still alive. I think that and the fact that Ashford planned on creating the T-virus could be used as an argument that he is the more brilliant researcher out of the three. But you can definitely argue that James Marcus was the better researcher out of the three. I also believe that Edward Ashford was dedicated to his research, because when his son mentions his cloning project, Edward Ashford isn't too interested in it. He was more interested in creating the T-virus. I don't really have much to say else about Edward Ashford because there isn't much to say about Edward Ashford. So let's just move on to the outro. Today we looked at 4 different sides of Umbrella, from one of its test subjects to one of its founders. We looked at one of its researchers and one of its allies. And in this video you can kinda see that even though Umbrella was such a big pharmaceutical company in Resident Evil's world, sooner or later Umbrella was gonna crash and burn on itself. And it's a shocker that it lasts as long as it did. And not only that, you were able to see that Umbrella was a very sick company. Like, why did they have to do George Trevor and his family like that? And also, one of their biggest allies was only there for the money. And once that money stopped flowing, he would have been going. But the fact that Umbrella was such a sick company, some of its own employees couldn't even stomach the crimes and things that they were doing. So they was going to expose them. But if the founders are a group of backstabbers and sick ass people, then the company will be just like them. And just like their friendship, it was destined to fail. Anyway, if you made it this far into the video and you liked the video, you can give the video a like. If you didn't, thank you for the watch time. If you want to, you can always comment what character you want me to do next. But you still here?